Welcome to the deep dive. We take topics you're curious about, sources you send us, and really try to get to the heart of them.
Yeah, dig in a bit.
Exactly. And today we're tackling a really big one in personal finance. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know, the full title is What the Rich Teach Their Kids About Money That the Poor and Middle Class Do Not.
Right. And the cover, I think it says it's the #1 personal finance book ever, according to USA Today anyway. So
Yeah.
it's definitely made an impact.
Huge impact. So what makes it so compelling? It seems to challenge a lot of standard advice.
It absolutely does. And that's, I think, a big part of its appeal. Kiyosaki covers, well, a whole range of stuff, from his own early attempts at business as a kid to understanding core concepts like assets and liabilities.
And the importance of financial education, right? That's a big theme.
Huge theme. And the mindset difference, how wealthy people supposedly think differently about money. Our mission today really is to sort of unpack those core ideas.
Yet the key takeaways.
Yeah, figure out why it resonated with so many people looking for, financial independence. Kind of a shortcut to his main points without getting bogged down.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute core. The two dads. This whole concept shapes the book, doesn't it?
It really does. It's all about how our fundamental beliefs about money often come straight from how we were raised.
So he has his poor dad, that was his actual father, right? Highly educated, government job.
Yes, his biological dad. And then there's the rich dad, who was his friend Mike's father, a businessman, more self-made.
And they just had completely different ways of looking at money.
Totally different philosophies. And that contrast, it really makes you question your own assumptions. The advice they gave was almost opposite.
Like what specifically?
Well, the poor dad believed in, the traditional path. Get a good education, find a secure job, save money. He stressed having a really good resume.
The safe route. Financial security through employment.
Exactly. Whereas the rich dad, he was all about financial independence, owning assets, creating businesses, creating jobs even.
So not writing a good resume, but writing business plans.
Precisely. Learning how to write business and financial plans, it just shows how those early messages can put you on, well, very different tracks in life.
And Kiyosaki having both these influences, it gave him a unique perspective.
Absolutely. It's like he got to see both sides, understand how those different thought patterns lead to different outcomes, different life choices, really.
It's not just theory, though. He talks about his own childhood experiences trying to make money, like that toothpaste tube idea.
Oh, yeah, the toothpaste tube caper. He was about 9. This is back in, 1956. He and his friend Mike decided they'd make money collecting old toothpaste tubes.
Which sounds a bit weird, but what was the plan?
Well, the tubes back then apparently had lead in them, or they thought they did. Their plan was to melt them down, get the lead, and then, well, use it to make counterfeit nickels.
Wow, okay. Counterfeiting at age 9? Did they actually do it?
They set up a whole production line. Used old milk cartons from school for molds, the family hibachi grill for melting. I mean, you got to admire the hustle, right?
Definitely points for effort, but I'm guessing it didn't end well.
No, not exactly. Kiyosaki's poor dad and his friend found out. And the reactions were, well, very telling.
How so?
The poor dad, being very by the book, explained carefully that counterfeiting was illegal and, shut it down. Made sense.
Right.
But the rich dad, while obviously not saying go ahead and counterfeit, actually praised their ingenuity, their drive. He told them not to give up on finding ways to make money, just, find legal ways.
Ah, okay. So encouraging the entrepreneurial spirit, even if a specific idea was flawed.
Exactly. It really highlights that difference in mindset towards risk and trying things.
And that wasn't their only venture, was it? They tried something else?
No, they pivoted. Their next idea was a comic book library.
A library? How did that work?
They collected old comics, set up shop in Mike's basement, and charged neighborhood kids 10 cents to come in and read for 2 hours. As many comics as they wanted.
Huh. That's pretty clever. Did they make money?
Yeah, apparently they averaged about $9.50 a week, which wasn't bad back then. They even hired Mike's sister as the librarian, paid her $1 a week plus free comics.
A mini business. Why did that one end?
Bullies, apparently. Kids from another neighborhood caused trouble, so they had to shut it down after a few months. But again, the rich dad framed it as a lesson.
What was the lesson there?
The power of having a business work for you. Making money even when you're not physically there, that idea of passive income. It wasn't just about trading time for money like in a normal job.
Right. Making money work for you. That's such a central theme. And it connects to that story about him working for Mike's dad, the rich dad, for only 10 cents an hour. He was
Yeah.
pretty mad about that, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He was really frustrated, felt totally exploited.
Mm.
But Rich Dad had a purpose. It wasn't really about the labor. It was about teaching a lesson, making Robert so frustrated that he'd want to figure out how money really works, to ignite that desire to make money work for him, not the other way around.
So the low pay was intentional to make him think differently.
Exactly. And the core lesson Rich Dad wanted him to get was, stop blaming other people or the low pay. Realize you have the power to change your situation, change yourself.
Take ownership.
Yes. And he introduced this idea that fear often controls our financial lives. Fear of not paying bills, fear of getting fired, fear of not having enough.
Yeah, those are real fears.
Definitely. But Rich Dad argued that this fear keeps people trapped, stuck working for money, hoping the money will make the fear go away, but it usually doesn't. It just keeps you in that cycle.
The trap, as he calls it, letting money run your life because of fear or desire.
Precisely. Rich Dad urged him to see how emotions like fear and greed can dictate actions. And instead of just reacting, to step back, think, and choose your path consciously. Don't let money be the boss.
Okay, this feels like a good transition into maybe the biggest takeaway from the book. Assets versus liabilities. He calls it rule number 1, right?
Absolutely core. Rule #1. You must know the difference between an asset and a liability and buy assets. Simple, but profound in his context.
So what is the difference, according to Kiyosaki? His definitions are pretty specific.
Very specific and very simple. An asset, he says, is something that puts money in your pocket.
Okay.
And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it.
That sounds straightforward enough.
It does.
Yeah.
And he argues that if you want to be rich, you spend your life buying assets. If you spend your life buying liabilities, you'll likely struggle financially, even if you earn a good income.
He uses those diagrams, the income statement and balance sheet, to show the cash flow. How does that work?
Right. So the income statement shows your income coming in and expenses going out. The balance sheet lists your assets and liabilities. An asset generates income, which shows up on the income side of your income statement. A liability generates expenses, which show up on the expense side. So assets feed your income, liabilities eat it up. That's the cash flow pattern he stresses.
And this is where he challenges conventional thinking, especially about things like, well, your own house. Most people see that as their biggest asset, right?
Exactly. And that's a major point of contention for many readers. Kiyosaki argues that your primary residence, the house you live in, is typically a liability, not an asset.
Why? Because it costs you money.
Precisely. You have the mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, repairs, maintenance. It constantly takes money out of your pocket. Now, a rental property that generates positive cash flow after expenses, that's an asset in his book.
So the rich focus on buying income-producing assets, while the middle class often buys liabilities they think are assets.
That's his central argument.
Right.
And he says this is why just earning more money doesn't always make the middle class wealthier.
Because they just buy more liabilities. Bigger house, nicer car.
Yeah, the rat race phenomenon. Income goes up, but so do expenses and liabilities, often even faster. Lifestyle creep. They stay stuck. The wealthy, he says, use increased income to buy more assets, which generate more income, creating a positive cycle.
So assets are things like rental properties, dividends, stocks, bonds, royalties.
Right. Things that generate income. Liabilities are the mortgage on your own home, car loans, credit card debt, things that drain your cash flow.
Okay. He also offers a different way to define wealth itself. It's not just net worth.
No, it's different. He uses a definition from Buckminster Fuller, basically saying wealth is how many days you could survive financially if you stopped working today.
Ah, so it's a measure of time and independence based on your passive income covering your expenses.
Exactly. It's about cash flow survival, not just the paper value of stuff you own, some of which might not generate cash or might even cost you money. Net worth can be misleading.
Can you give that example he used?
Sure. If your assets generate, say, $1,000 a month, but your expenses are $2,000 a month, your wealth, in his terms, is enough to survive about half a month.
Okay.
Financial independence, then, is when your monthly income from assets exceeds your monthly expenses. That's the goal.
Wow.
You're no longer dependent on a job.
That really reframes the objective, doesn't it? It leads into his next point. Mind your own business. What's he getting at there? It doesn't mean literally start a company tomorrow, does it?
Not necessarily. Minding your own business means focusing on building your asset column. That's your real business, according to Rich Dad. Your profession is how you earn income, maybe, but your business is your collection of assets.
So don't just focus on your job. Focus on acquiring assets.
Right. He argues that financial struggles often happen because people spend their lives working for someone else's business, their employer,
Yeah.
and neglecting their own asset column.
So the advice is keep your day job, especially at first, but start buying assets on the side.
Exactly. Use your job income to fuel asset acquisition.
And what kind of assets does he mean here?
He lists things like businesses you own but don't have to work in daily, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, income-generating real estate, notes, like loans you own, royalties from intellectual property, things that work for you.
And this ties into buying luxuries too, right? What's the rule there?
Luxuries come last. And crucially, they should be paid for by the income generated from your assets, not from your job salary, or worse, with debt.
So build the assets first, then let the assets buy the luxuries. The opposite of what many people do.
Precisely. He says the middle class often buys luxuries on credit to look rich, digging themselves deeper into liabilities. The rich build assets first.
Okay, moving on to something a bit more technical maybe. The power of corporations. How does that fit into the rich dad philosophy?
This is key to understanding how the rich, as he puts it, legally minimize their taxes. He gives a quick history lesson, saying taxes were initially aimed at the rich.
The Robin Hood idea.
Right. But the rich, being financially savvy, figured out how to use legal structures, like corporations, to protect their assets and reduce their tax burden. A corporation isn't necessarily a big building with employees.
What is it then?
He says it's basically a file folder with some legal documents. It's a separate legal entity. And that separation offers big advantages.
Like liability protection.
That's one. But a huge one is how expenses are treated for tax purposes.
How so?
As an employee, you earn money, pay taxes on it, and then pay your expenses with what's left. A corporation, however, can often earn money, pay its legitimate expenses, and then pay taxes on whatever profit remains.
Ah, so expenses are paid with pre-tax dollars.
Exactly. Things like maybe health insurance, car expenses, travel, if they're legitimate business expenses, can be paid before taxes are calculated. That's a massive difference compared to being an employee. Understanding this game, as he calls it, is crucial.
This connects to another piece of advice, especially for younger people. Work to learn, not just to earn. What's the idea there?
He strongly advises young people starting out to prioritize jobs based on what skills they can learn, rather than just chasing the highest starting salary.
Because skills pay off long term.
That's the idea. The knowledge and skills acquired, especially in areas like sales, marketing, communication, and management, will be far more valuable for building wealth down the road than a slightly bigger paycheck early on.
He even suggests getting a second job just to learn a specific skill, like sales through network marketing.
Yeah, he specifically mentions network marketing companies because many offer good sales training. He sees it as a low-risk way to learn crucial skills like selling, communication, and overcoming the fear of rejection.
What other key skills does he highlight for success?
He talks about needing key management skills,
Yeah.
managing cash flow, managing systems, and managing people, and then crucial specialized skills, especially sales and marketing, being able to communicate, negotiate, sell
Yeah.
yourself, your product, your idea.
Okay. Now, building wealth involves risk. Let's talk about overcoming fear and failure. He admits even rich people fear losing money, right?
Absolutely. Fear is universal. The difference, he says, is how you handle that fear and how you view failure
How should we view failure?
as part of the process. Essential, even. He argues that people who avoid failure also avoid success. You have to be willing to take risks, make mistakes, and learn from them.
He uses that remember the Alamo example, doesn't he?
Yeah, and talking about how Texans embrace failure as a rallying cry, something that inspires them to try again, bigger and better. Instead of letting failure paralyze you, use it as feedback, as motivation.
Reframe it as learning. Okay.
Yeah.
What about other mental blocks, like cynicism, the chicken little thing he mentions?
Right. The cynic is always worried the sky's falling. They focus on the I don't want the hassle of tenants, so they dismiss all real estate. That cynicism, that focus on potential negatives, blinds them to opportunity.
And laziness, how does that fit in? It's not just about sitting on the couch, is it?
No, he talks about a kind of laziness, where people stay busy to avoid dealing with important things. Like avoiding learning about finances because it seems hard, or not addressing issues in their health or relationships. It's avoidance disguised as busyness.
He uses Colonel Sanders as an example against cynicism and giving up.
Yeah, getting rejected over 1,000 times before KFC took off when he was already in his 60s. A powerful story about persistence.
Definitely. Now, a practical habit, paying yourself first. What does it actually mean in practice?
It means, literally, when you get income, the very first bill you pay is to yourself by putting money into your asset column before you pay your mortgage, your credit cards, your utilities.
That sounds difficult. What if there isn't enough left over?
That's the point, in a way.
Yeah.
He argues the pressure of needing to pay your other bills after you've paid yourself first forces you to become more creative, more resourceful in finding ways to generate more income or manage expenses. It builds financial discipline and ensures your assets grow. Paying everyone else first leaves you with the scraps.
It builds financial muscle, he says. Okay. And this all requires ongoing learning, doesn't it? Financial education isn't a one-off.
Absolutely not. Continuous learning is vital. Find experts, read books, go to seminars, be open to new ideas. He shares a story about a real estate seminar he attended that directly led to making a lot of money. Investing in your financial intelligence pays the best dividends.
And don't just stick to one way of thinking. Be open. Smart investors look for the next opportunity, not trying to time the market perfectly.
Exactly. Keep learning, keep looking. Which leads to his idea of inventing money. What does he mean by that?
It sounds like magic, but it's more about financial creativity.
Right. It's about seeing value or creating deals where others don't. He gives an example like finding a distressed property, say, worth $65,000, but you negotiate to buy it for $45,000 with just $5,000 down.
Okay, then what?
Then maybe you create a promissory note for the difference, or quickly find a buyer willing to pay $60,000, and you structure the deal so you make a profit quickly, perhaps without even using much more of your own cash or triggering immediate taxes. It's about structuring deals creatively, using financial intelligence, not just saving pennies from a paycheck.
Using financial knowledge to create opportunities. That sounds like what he calls a sophisticated investor. He makes a distinction there.
Yes, he contrasts two types. Type 1 buys packaged investments, stocks, bonds, funds, through a broker. Pretty standard.
Okay.
Type 2, the more sophisticated investor, creates investments. They put deals together. He says this requires three main skills.
Which are?
1, how to find opportunities others miss seeing with your mind, not just your eyes. 2, how to raise money creatively, not just relying on banks. And 3, how to organize smart people working with accountants, attorneys, brokers effectively.
And understanding markets. He says profit is made when you buy, not just when you sell.
Crucial point. Knowing what makes a good deal, how to negotiate it, how to structure it, that's financial intelligence in action.
And he brings up sales skills again here, connecting it to being a sophisticated investor.
He does. He tells that story about the brilliant writer who wasn't a best-selling author until she learned how to sell and market herself. Being able to sell an idea, a deal, yourself is fundamental.
So how do you find these deals? Any practical tips?
Look everywhere. Shop for bargains in assets just like you shop for bargains in groceries. Look at foreclosures, bankruptcies, stock market dips. Think big. Can you pool resources with others for better deals? Learn from history. Big companies started small.
And value good advice, right? Pay professionals well.
Yes. Don't cheap out on good accountants, attorneys, brokers. Their advice should make you money or save you much more than they cost.
He also mentions Indian giving in investing. What's that about?
It's a somewhat dated term, but his point is about getting your initial capital back out of a deal as quickly as possible. Once your initial money is returned, the asset you still control is essentially free, generating pure profit or cash flow. Focus on ROI and getting your seed money back fast.
Makes sense. Risk reduction. He also talks about using desire as a motivator for learning.
Yeah, like the story of Rich Dad's son wanting a car. Instead of just buying it, Rich Dad used that desire as a lever to teach him about money, investing, maybe making him work for it, or figure out how to buy it with investment returns, even playing the cash flow game.
And find heroes to emulate.
Definitely. Study people like Warren Buffett or whoever resonates with you in the field you're interested in. Learn how they think, how they invest.
Then there's the principle of giving. How does that fit with getting rich?
Rich Dad's philosophy was, if you want something, you first need to give. Whether it's money, time, knowledge, education, teach, and you shall receive. It seems counterintuitive, maybe, but he believed generosity opens doors and creates abundance, often in unexpected ways. Give first.
And ultimately, it all comes down to action. You can't just read the book.
Absolutely. Take action. Stop procrastinating. Find a mentor. Take a class. Make offers on properties, even low ones. Walk the neighborhood looking for deals. Attend seminars. Start doing something. He shares stories of finding great deals just by actively looking and asking.
Okay, towards the end, he gets a bit more philosophical with the goal is the path. What's he mean there?
It's about finding your purpose, what you were meant to do beyond just making money or having a profession. He feels traditional schools train you for a job, the ERS quadrant, but not necessarily to find your true path in life.
He talks about his own journey of trusting his gut and seeking self-development.
Right. And he breaks down personal development into 4 parts: spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. School focuses almost entirely on the mental.
Which might explain why some successful entrepreneurs weren't great students.
That's his suggestion. They might have developed their emotional or spiritual intelligence more, which he sees as crucial for making big life changes, like quitting a bad habit or shifting from being an employee to a business owner or investor. He believes his cash flow game actually helps develop all 4 areas.
And that game relates directly to his cash flow quadrant model, right? Just briefly, what is that?
It's a simple diagram showing 4 ways people earn income: E for employee, S for self-employed or small business owner, B for big business owner with systems, and I for investor.
And the idea is that different quadrants have different mindsets and paths to wealth.
Yeah. He suggests financial freedom is easiest and fastest to achieve on the right side, the B and I quadrants, because that's where you leverage systems and money works for you. He uses that analogy of building a water pipeline, B or I, versus carrying buckets of water, E or S. One creates passive income, the other requires constant effort.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what are the absolute must-remember takeaways?
I'd say number 1, that mindset shift. Stop thinking only about working for money. Start thinking about how to get money working for you.
Okay.
Number 2, really understand the difference between an asset, puts money in your pocket, and a liability, takes money out, and focus relentlessly on acquiring assets.
Got it.
3, financial education is crucial and ongoing. Keep learning. 4, don't let fear paralyze you. Failure is part of learning. Take calculated risks.
Manage the fear, learn from mistakes.
Exactly. Those are the big ones, I think.
So a final thought for everyone listening, drawing from all this, really consider what kind of financial path are you on right now? Are you mostly carrying buckets, trading your time directly for money, or are you actively starting to build a pipeline, creating assets that can generate income more passively? And maybe think, what's one small step, just one thing you could do today to start building that financial intelligence muscle and move even just a tiny bit towards whatever your own definition of wealth might be. Maybe it's picking up the book itself, or just starting to track where your money really goes. Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.